Welcome to another lesson in school book or online lesson. But before we start off with the lecture, since this video is uploaded in YouTube, I would like to invite you to hit that like button, subscribe, and start the learning process with me. Today we're going to discuss about environmental principles. So the opening question would always be, what are these principles and what are their use in the study of environmental science? To begin with, environmental principles actually emanated from the former laws of ecology, which was first conceived and presented by the renowned ecologist and physicist Barry Commoner. According to Barry Commoner, the purpose of environmental principle is that it offers protection to our natural world. And how does it offer protection? Because since man is basically the foremost or the primary species that has significantly affected the environment, it has become necessary for the actions of man to be guided by such principles. And in the present day situation, environmental principles generally serve as guide for lawmakers, judges, and decision makers, giving laws and policies its ideal shape and meaning. So before such decisions can be made, they usually refer to the environmental principles that would guide their conscience. Environmental principles work together to ensure high environmental standards by directing how judges and other decision makers should interpret the law. And it is generally used in making decisions, planning, and management. Okay, so let's enumerate and state the seven environmental principles one by one. If you look at the seven environmental principles, there are four that are highlighted in red, and those are the original laws of ecology that Barry Commoner presented. And among the four, the fourth one, which is there's no such thing as a free lunch, was no longer part of the seven environmental principles because of the reason that um, the statement itself has a profound impact in each and every of the seven environmental principles, which I will later discuss. So let's state them one by one. Is connected to everything else. Two, everything in nature has to go somewhere. Three, nature knows best. Four, everything in nature changes. Five, all forms of life are important. Six, ours is a finite earth. And seven, nature is God's gift to all, and it is everybody's duty to protect it. So let's begin with principle number one. Everything is connected to everything else. Basically follows the ecology concept of interconnectedness, wherein there are many natural processes here in nature, wherein the action of one ultimately affects the outcome of another phenomenon, such that they are interconnected and they are interdependent with one another. But removal of one factor or one component in a particular interrelationship would inadvertently or even adversely affect the entire process. And there are many processes that are obviously interconnected, such as the food chain and the food web. So those are basic ecology concepts that truly reflect what the first principle is all about. The biogeochemical cycle is another example of interconnectedness. The relationship, the symbiotic relationship of organisms that involves, for example, predation, parasitism, commensalism, they are also interconnections that the removal of one party or one participant in this interconnection will will result to the unfavorable outcome for the remaining participant in the interconnection. And therefore, if you disrupt this interconnection, it will surely result to an imbalance occurring in nature. Second, the second environmental principle is about everything in nature has to go somewhere. And the first thing, or the most obvious environmental issue and problem about the second environmental principle is the issue on waste. We often, we are generally a consuming public. We are part of the consuming public, and uh, one of the unfavorable, or what I may consider less ideal activities for our existence is the generation of waste. Most people often consider waste as something that no longer becomes their concern the moment it is out of their sight. However, it is not true, because any waste that you generate will have to go somewhere, and it will affect any species or the environment, the surroundings, to where it will start to accumulate. And it is because of your indiscriminate and negligent action of not disposing it in its proper place, but instead just letting it go to other places wherein it could create harmful effects to its to whatever destination it goes. Number three, the third principle is about nature knows best. Right now, we are actually witnessing the very controversial uh, rehabilitation being done in Manila, along the Manila Bay Walk, wherein dolomite sand from Cebu is being shipped from Cebu, and it is being laid on the coast, on the Baywalk of Manila, for rehabilitation purposes. However, if you will look, if you will look at the situation or what is happening, it is clearly a violation of the third principle, because nature actually intended the place not to have sands like that. It was the natural color of the sand in Manila Bay is typically dark, and despite all efforts to change its appearance, it will just be superficial, and the sea will just wash it away. And so, together with it would be the money that the government has wasted trying to rehabilitate, or trying to do a cosmetic rehabilitation of Manila Bay. So, fourth one is everything in nature changes. Everything in nature changes is the simple explanation of all the phenomena occurring in nature. Nature itself is not static, because all processes and all phenomena are dynamic, wherein there will always be a succession of events or conditions following certain changes in the environment. For example, if a forest fire breaks out in a forest, in a somewhere up in the mountains, there would naturally be widespread destruction of the vegetation as a result of the fire. But it doesn't mean that it will remain scarred forever, because succession takes place wherein there would be another set of species that will be growing from the scorched earth. And in so doing, will then go on to a series of changes that will eventually create a new, probably create a new ecosystem, which may be similar or which may be completely different from the old ecosystem prior or before the fire. Five, all forms of life are important. Okay, in this principle, it clearly suggests that every living thing on earth was put here for a purpose, and we have no right to eliminate this organism, or even a non-living object, if it does not serve any useful purpose for us. Probably it may not be useful for us, but it may be very useful to another species. And in so doing, we should not eliminate that species because it will affect or it will adversely affect the existence or the survival of the other organism that depends on it. Number six is ours is a finite Earth. Okay, the concept of sustainable development actually is relevant to the sixth environmental principle because we are now realizing that that the resources of the earth is now not enough compared to the ever-increasing population. Wherein right now, the overall ecological footprint of all humans living here on earth will require more than one planet or more than one planet worth of resources. And unless we change our lifestyle, we might be heading to our own extinction because the earth will ultimately be not suitable or will not be able to provide us with all the necessities and essentials which we need to survive. And second, nature is God's gift to all, and it is everybody's duty to protect it. Here, the concept of stewardship plays into the picture because in one of the passages in the Bible, particularly in the book of Genesis, God gave man dominion over all his creations, but not but it should not be interpreted that dominion means man should do to God's creation to do as he pleases to God's creation, but instead man has to take care of God's creation because it is also man who will benefit from the fruits that his creation has provided man to live with. Okay, the statement that where there's no such thing as a free lunch simply suggests that for every actions that we do, there will always be consequences in exchange for that action. So just like when we have interactions with our fellow man, we should always be mindful of what our actions will create to our fellow man. And in so doing, we should think first before doing any actions that we believe might cause undue discomfort, suffering, pain, and destruction, not only to our fellow man, but to the environment as well.